A water bath canner just like this one is one of the basic items you'll need for canning. There are some other basic items I will also show you that you'll need. That and a whole lot more coming up on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
This program was funded by the following.
At dollarseed.com, all of our seeds are only $1 a pack. And we have online resources that teach you all about the rewarding hobby of growing your own plants, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Imagine the joy you'll feel when your children actually help you harvest your first garden crop, or the pride of knowing you'll never need a florist again. Visit dollarseed.com and grow a little magic of your own for just $1. Dollarseed.com. What could be healthier?
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. I'm Holly Baird. This show is dedicated to the average gardener, simple home living, and using what you already have. Today we're going to talk about the basic items you need for home canning. It can be intimidating to think about canning your own fruits and vegetables, but it is something that's going to prolong the life of your bounty from your garden or the farmer's market, and it's something that it's nice to be able to crack open a jar of beets or some tomatoes in February, knowing that you grew them in your garden or they were super fresh when you put them into the jar. We're going to talk about first about the different pots you need for canning. We have the stock pots up there, and those are for cooking the food before you put it in the jars. Then we have our water bath canners. Water bath canning is the simplest way to preserve your foods. We have two different ones. We have a smaller one and then we have this larger one. Now, there's a rack in there so that the jars don't touch the bottom, because you don't want that because they could explode inside the canner. If you have a large stock pot, a really large deep stock pot, you don't really have to get a water bath canner. You could just put some racking in the bottom or some knives in the bottom to prevent it from touching it. But there's not a big cost for these. We actually got this one on clearance at our local hardware store. So it's worth the expense if you're going to do the canning, because it's going to pay off in the long run. Another investment is this 4-piece kit that we got from a local hardware store. This is for measuring the headspace in your jars. You want to do that so that you want to leave space in the jar when you put in the water bath canner so it doesn't basically explode. Then we have the jar lifter. This is handy for getting the jars out of the hot water without burning yourself. And then you have to sterilize the lids. So this is nice. It's like got a magnet on one end, and it's nice for picking up the lids out of the hot water when you sterilize them. We also have the jar funnel, which I'll show you in just a moment here. And like I said, that came in a 4-piece kit. Jars obviously are something that's important for canning. You want to get mason jars, canning jars. You don't want to use like your old mayonnaise jar, your old spaghetti jar. You want to make sure that they are qualified mason canning jars. You can find those at a local hardware store. We find a lot of rummage sales, estate sales, things like that. You can look online for that sort of thing. The jar funnel, as you can see, goes in the jars, and then that makes it easier to fill, especially when the item you put in the jar is hot. Then there comes the 2-piece lids. There's the lid, and then there's the ring. The ring holds the lid on. You want to make sure you're using the 2-piece lids. You keep the ring, you reuse the ring in the jar, you throw this away when you're done consuming whatever is in the jar. You can, we've reused them in the past for, turning them over and storing stuff in them like that, but not for canning. Other items that you're going to need is a kitchen timer. You don't have to use anything special, it's just nice because when you put the stuff in the hot water bath, you want to know how long it needs to be in there for and time it. Another thing is measuring cups. Measuring cups come in handy for These are liquid measuring cups. We also have dry measuring cups and spoons. Spoons and ladles. It's good to ladle the hot items into the jar. Towels. You're going to use a lot of towels. Those are nice for, you lay one out on the table, put the hot jars on top of it. And obviously for wiping the rims off, because you want to make sure the rims are clean before you put the lids on. Some of the more advanced items you can use for canning is a pressure canner. That's for canning more low acid foods, and a lot of your recipes you'll see that. And then a jelly strainer set, that's for different jams and jellies and fruit honeys and things like that. So as you can see, there's just some typical items. Some you probably already have on hand, you know, spoons and measuring cups and towels, and some that you might need to invest in. But when you open up that can of tomatoes that you grew fresh in your garden in the middle of February, and you can just taste the juiciness, it's definitely worth the expense.
Every year, millions and millions of flower hanging pots get sold at your local nursery. But at the end of the growing season, very few of them get recycled. Most of them just get tossed and dumped in your local landfill. Well, there's a new eco-friendly way of using your old hanging pots for edible gardening. Now, you typically you'll have your hanging pot with your flower in it, and at the end of the year, it'll probably left hanged out too long and it got frozen, died. Well, you want to remove that from the pot, refill the pot with good compost or potting soil, and you can basically grow almost, not quite everything, but a lot of items that you would normally grow in the ground. Now, you could grow your herbs in a little container like this for, you know, 1 or 2 person, but you can also use them grow them in your hanging pot like we had this basil. 2 benefits to this. One, it gives you fresh basil throughout the growing season, and then as it gets cold, you can bring it inside, but you can also harvest the excess basil and you make pesto, or you can pass it along to friends and family, or you can dry it yourself and you can have it during the winter months. They also have a lot of varieties of vegetables now that are for compact areas. This is a compact container, or they call it patio tomato plant, and it works really well in these hanging pots. We'll plant 5 or 6 of these and pass them out to friends and family who don't have the ability to have a garden, and they can hang them on their front porch during the summer months and have fresh produce. Other things you can grow in these hanging pots that are really good are strawberries, lettuce. I've even seen people grow patty pan squash in these. Any type of greens work really well. Now, and you can be very creative with what you grow in them. Now, some of the things I've not been very successful with that you might be is radishes and spinach. I've not had very much success with either one of those. So that's something you can experiment with. So there's a lot of things that you can grow in these that you could grow in the ground as well, to have a hanging garden, edible garden that is, outside your back door. Whether you forget to water your plants or your plants are in a hard to reach area, a water globe is an easy alternative to always making sure your plants have enough water. But you don't have to purchase those that you see on the TV. You can create your own. Right here we have a water globe. We're in the developmental stages of it. It's simply a soda bottle, a vacuum extension wand, and a crevice tool from that vacuum. Now, as you can see here, the water line is where we started about 4.5 weeks ago, and it has slowly leaked into the pot. Now, these are sunflowers that are just about gone, but this was more of a experimental project, and it seems to work quite well. And we're going to try a couple other ones where we cut the pipe down shorter. If you come in the house with me, I'll show you what you can do with your plants that you can't reach very well. Now, as we come to the house, you can do the same concept as we did on the porch, but on a much smaller scale. In our flower pots here, we've got a 15-ounce plastic bottle that we filled with water, and we've just basically screwed it into the soil where the root ball is. And you can watch the soil naturally whip the water the plant needs in. Another option you have is you can take an old beer bottle or a long neck wine bottle, whichever you have, and do the same thing. And you can see the water levels there, and it's naturally wicking into the soil as the plant is calling for. So it's another way to reuse some of the items you have in your house. Or with your 2-liter soda bottles, as you've seen, we've made little greenhouses for in the garden in the spring. You actually turn them upside down, screw them into the base of whatever container you're going to water to cut the top off, and you can use it as basically a water Same concept as the small bottles up there in the hang pots. Fill the water up and let the plant naturally pick up the water that it needs. So just some of the options you have when you can basically create your own water globe instead of purchasing one at the store. There's more uses for your canning jar after the food has already been consumed. I'm going to show you some of the things that we do with our canning jars to give them some more use in the home. We keep our dry goods in them. It organizes the cabinet a whole lot nicer. You can see how much you have or how much you don't have, and it keeps the moisture out of them. And if you have an issue with bugs or dirt or debris, it'll keep the products clean as well. We've got some cornstarch here, some cornmeal, some rye mix. In the back here in the big jars we have pumpkin seed flour and pumpkin flour. If you have a lot of cereal on hand, they work very well. And a typical cereal box will have about 2.5 quarts of cereal. So you can see all the varieties that you have very easily. You can store nuts in them, keeps the moisture out of the nuts and preserves them nicely. In the fridge you can put juice in it. This is our pumpkin juice that we made. If you want to take the juice out of the jars that you buy at the store and put in them, it keeps I think it keeps the juice colder because of the glass. With the smaller jars, there's some different uses for them. This is a lid off a shaker cheese. Now, some of you may or may not know that it fits perfectly on a regular mouth jar. And it's much more presentable on the table, whether you have guests or family over, than that tall plastic container with the cheese in it. So that's a nice use for that. The small jars, we keep our dry herbs in. We have some purple basil and some mint there. We'll keep them next to the spice rack. In the fridge, we use a jelly jar to keep minced garlic in. That preserves it and keeps it quite well for use on everyday cooking. Now the blue jars look nice if you keep them on a shelf or you collect them, but there's other uses for them. In the kitchen, we take a blue jar and we turn it into a sugar container. Took a top off of a cardboard salt tube with a little lip. You've seen us make these before on the show. In the bathroom, you can take and turn it into a soap dispenser. We've done that on the show as well. Also, the blue jar works very nice for storing your cotton balls. Also, it presents a nice little display. You can keep both these on the counter in the bathroom. Also, some people use canning jars as glasses, and some restaurants do that as well. You've got your quart jar, you can just use it as a normal drinking glass. Or if you get the chance and you find these at a yard sale online, you want to purchase these. These are 16-ounce drink jars, canning jars with a handle on them. They make them in quart, but those are much more rare. And you can get creative and put a little lid on it too. And we'll show you how to do that on an upcoming show. Just some of the uses other than preserving food you can use your canning jars for during the rest of the year. Leaf lettuce will probably be one of the first items you plant in your garden as soon as the soil can be worked. But you don't want to plant it right away. Like the back of the seed packet says, plant as soon as the soil can be worked. Well, you want to be aware of the soil temperature. How do you know what soil temperature is? You can pick up a device such as this at your local home and garden center and probe down 4 inches and find out the soil temperature. There are also websites available in your area that will tell you what the average overall temperature is. Now, leaf lettuce grows best between 50 and 60 degrees, but you can get away by planting it as low as 40 degrees, but nothing lower. At 40 to 50 degrees, it'll take about 15 days for your seeds to germinate. Between 50 and 60 degrees, if you can hold off until it reaches that average temperature, the soil that is, it'll take about 7 days. Well, once we established when to plant it, where do you plant it at? Well, it depends on where you're at in the country. I prefer to plant mine with a warm sunlight in the morning and shade in the afternoon, which allows my growing season to be longer because some lettuce is very heat tolerant and will bolt very early in the season. Now, if you don't have access to planting the seeds in the ground, you can plant them in containers such as hanging pots. Fill them up, hang them on the porch, on the back patio, and somewhere where it's shady. And you want to keep plenty of moisture. And in the hanging pots, when they're early, the plants are early, you can use a squirt bottle to mist the seeds to get them to germinate properly. Well, A tip that we learned from our third president, Thomas Jefferson, was that he loved leaf lettuce. So one of the things that he did on his plantation in Monticello was every Monday morning he would plant a thimbleful of leaf lettuce seed. Well, you may not have a thimble available to use, but you do have a measuring device of a teaspoon. We're going to practice this at the garden this year. Plant a teaspoon of leaf lettuce seeds so we can keep a supply through the summer months. Now, like you may come to a point where you have more leaf lettuce than you know what to do with, and you've already gave it to all your neighbors and friends that'll accept it. Well, one of the things you can do is make lettuce soup. There's many recipes available online with different contents that the soup contains. You can make it and put it in the freezer and you can eat it during the winter months. Now it's more of an appetizer with crackers than really a full meal, but that's another option you have when you have too much leaf lettuce. So if you've never planted lettuce before, I encourage you. There's nothing better than to have a salad outside your back door.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for watching the show. I really hope you enjoy watching it just as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. And can you believe just a small investment that you need for capturing the freshness from your garden in a jar to enjoy all year? And can you believe how many things you can put into a hanging pot and they make great gifts to pass on throughout the summer? From all of us at the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, I'm Holly Baird, encouraging you to take a child gardening with you and start growing those memories.
This program was funded by the following.
At DollarSeed.com, all of our seeds are only $1 a pack. And we have online resources that teach you all about the rewarding hobby of growing your own plants, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Imagine the joy you'll feel when your children actually help you harvest your first garden crop, or the pride of knowing you'll never need a florist again. Visit DollarSeed.com and grow a little magic of your own for just $1. DollarSeed.com. What could be healthier?
The show never ends on our Facebook page. Keyword Wisconsin Vegetable Gardeners. Like the page and continue the discussion there. You can now follow us on Twitter, see what we're up to and what we're doing at the garden. The address, the W-I Veg Gardener, Gardenr. You can email us at the WIVeggardener@gmail.com with your questions, comments, or suggestions about the show.